Donald Trump's victory in the United States presidential election brought significant unpredictability to international trade, particularly with key North American partners. One of President Trump's most controversial promises was his intention to impose a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, including crude oil, two of the United States' main oil suppliers. This approach, aimed at protecting domestic industries and addressing trade imbalances, raised concerns about potential economic repercussions for both countries. Just days into his term, Trump reiterated his commitment, declaring that the tariffs on Canada and Mexico would take effect on February 1st, less than 10 days away. This was not the only executive order signed by the new president. On his inaugural day, Trump issued several significant executive orders early in his term, sparking widespread debate. One order reinstated over 8,000 military members discharged for refusing the COVID-19 vaccine, including provisions for back pay. Critics warned this could weaken military health protocols and set a precedent for future vaccination mandates. To combat illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and human smuggling, Trump deployed troops to the US-Mexico border and designated Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, raising concerns about border militarization and potential diplomatic tensions with Mexico. In a major environmental shift, Trump signed an order to exit the Paris Climate Accord, lift restrictions on fossil fuel extraction, and halt new offshore wind farm projects. Environmentalists criticize these actions, warning they could exacerbate the climate crisis and hinder progress towards sustainable energy. Additionally, Trump pardoned approximately 1,500 individuals involved in the January 6th Capitol riot, drawing backlash from those who saw it as undermining accountability and encouraging future unlawful behavior. Another executive order reversed diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives from the previous administration, with critics arguing this could dismantle efforts to address systemic inequalities in federal agencies. A controversial order targeting gender identity recognition enforced strict binary definitions of sex across federal agencies, eliminating protections for transgender and non-binary individuals. Advocacy groups condemned this measure, arguing it denied the existence and rights of transgender people. Finally, Trump withdrew the United States from the World Health Organization, citing dissatisfaction with its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and alleged political bias. Health experts cautioned this could hinder global health initiatives and weaken the US's ability to respond to international health crises. This video examines the tariffs imposed on Canada and the potential retaliatory actions by Canada, which could negatively affect the US economy. Canada and Mexico collectively account for over half of all US crude oil imports, with Canada alone supplying about 3.8 million barrels per day, more than half of total imports. Mexico, the second largest supplier, delivers billions of dollars worth of heavy crude oil annually to US refineries, which rely heavily on these imports to meet domestic energy demands. The proposed tariffs threaten this vital supply chain, potentially causing higher energy costs for American consumers and businesses, and jeopardizing the economic stability of two key US trading partners. Moreover, the tariffs could strain long-standing economic relationships established under the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, and provoke retaliatory measures, with both Canada and Mexico considering counteractions to protect their national interests. This emerging trade conflict underscores the complex interdependence of the North American energy sector and highlights the the broader risks of escalating protectionist policies in a highly interconnected global economy. Canada is currently evaluating possible responses to the proposed US tariffs. A primary option under review is reducing or halting oil exports to the US, a move that could have far-reaching effects. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has strongly supported using energy as leverage, suggesting the halt of electricity exports to the US, which could impact around 1.5 million American consumers, especially in states like Michigan and Wisconsin that heavily depend on Canadian energy. In Alberta, the situation is more nuanced. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith opposed the idea of cutting oil exports, stating it would severely harm the Canadian economy. As Alberta produces most of the crude oil exported to the US, her position is critical, warning that such a move could destabilize Canada's energy sector, leading to revenue losses, job cuts, and potential disruptions in domestic politics. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has taken a cautious approach, emphasizing the need for balance, measured response by the federal government. The federal government is exploring alternative retaliatory measures, including targeted tariffs on US goods like steel, aluminum, and orange juice. This multifaceted strategy aims to protect Canada's economic interests without unnecessarily escalating the conflict. Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced a snap election for February 27th, aiming to secure a mandate to address the economic challenges posed by the proposed US tariffs. Ford described the tariffs as an attack on Ontario's economy and emphasized the need for a strong response. Pierre Poilievre, leader of Canada's Conservative Party and a leading candidate to succeed Trudeau, vowed to retaliate against the US if the tariffs are imposed. He emphasized that such trade measures would harm both nations and pledged to take precise and targeted actions against the US if necessary. Poilievre also indicated plans to explore other trading partners to mitigate the impact of the tariffs on Canada. In a show of national unity, an Ottawa entrepreneur created a Canada is not for sale hat in response to President Trump's tariff threats and suggestions that Canada become the 51st state. The hats gained significant attention after Premier Ford wore one during a meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau, leading to tens of thousands of orders. The initiative aims to unify Canadians and counter rhetoric threatening Canada's economy. Additionally, the Canadian dollar has strengthened against the US dollar, reflecting investor skepticism about the implementation of the proposed tariffs. The loonie rose 0.2%, trading at 1.4350 per US dollar, marking a 0.9% increase for the week, after recovering from a near 5-year low. Concerns about the severity of the proposed tariffs influenced trading and oil prices. A significant Canadian export also saw slight increases. The tariff issue has brought rare political unity in Canada. Provincial leaders, regardless of political affiliation, are standing in solidarity with the federal government. Premiers of key provinces like Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec are backing strong countermeasures to protect their respective industries. Public sentiment in Canada is strongly opposed to the tariffs, with social media campaigns and protests gaining traction. Movements calling for consumer boycotts of US goods are also emerging, highlighting growing frustration among Canadians. Economic and political consequences. Reducing or stopping oil exports to the US would have profound economic and political effects for both countries. For the US, such action would disrupt energy supply chains and increase costs for consumers. States such as Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, heavily reliant on Canadian crude oil and electricity, would face shortages and higher energy prices. These disruptions could have a ripple effect on the US economy, particularly in industries dependent on affordable energy. For Canada, the economic impacts would be equally severe. Crude oil exports are a major revenue source, and any significant reduction could slow GDP growth, raise unemployment in the energy sector, and strain provincial budgets. Alberta, in particular, would bear the brunt, potentially increasing tensions between the province and the federal government. The economic downturn could also lead to higher inflation, further complicating Canada's domestic economic situation. Politically, the repercussions could be destabilizing. Cutting oil exports would likely strain Canada-US relations, undermining the cooperative framework of the USMCA. This could result in retaliatory actions from the US, further intensifying the trade dispute and reducing the chances of a negotiated settlement. Alternatives to reducing oil exports. Given the significant risks of cutting oil exports, Canada is considering other options. One major alternative is imposing retaliatory tariffs on US goods critical to specific states. This approach mirrors Canada's response to US tariffs on steel and aluminum in 2018, where similar duties were applied to American products like bourbon, orange juice, and steel items. Another strategy involves diversifying energy markets. Canada has been investing in infrastructure projects, such as the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, to improve access to global markets, especially in Asia. This would reduce Canada's dependence on the US as its primary energy customer, providing more flexibility in future trade negotiations. Enhancing domestic energy security is also a priority. By investing in renewable energy and boosting energy efficiency, Canada could decrease its reliance on fossil fuel exports, while positioning itself as a leader in the global transition to clean energy. These actions would not only lessen the impact of trade disputes, but also align with Canada's long-term environmental goals. Helps us reach a broader audience. And sharing your thoughts or feedback in the comments makes an even bigger impact. Thank you for watching. Now let's dive back into Mexico's retaliation strategy in response to President Donald Trump's plan to impose a 25% tariff on Mexican imports aimed at reducing migrant arrivals and the influx of synthetic fentanyl. Mexico is considering several countermeasures to protect its economic interests and maintain the trade balance between the two nations. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has indicated that Mexico might impose reciprocal tariffs on US goods if the proposed US tariffs are implemented. She highlighted that such actions could lead to a tit-for-tat escalation, potentially harming businesses operating in both countries. Sheinbaum stated, "One tariff would be followed by another in response, and so on, until we put at risk common businesses," emphasizing the interconnected nature of the US and Mexican economies. Beyond potential retaliatory tariffs, Mexico is proactively working to strengthen its economic position by reducing its trade deficit with countries like China and attracting foreign investment. President Sheinbaum introduced the Plan Mexico, which aims to replace a portion of imports with domestic production and develop key sectors such as automotive and aerospace. This plan is designed to enhance Mexico's economic resilience amid external trade pressures. Economic implications. The Mexican government has warned that the proposed US tariffs could lead to significant economic consequences, including the potential loss of around 400,000 US jobs and higher prices for American consumers. These concerns stem from the deep integration of supply chains especially in industries like automotive manufacturing, where components often cross the US-Mexico border multiple times during production. Diplomatic efforts. Mexico's economy minister, Marcelo Ebrard, has expressed a commitment to finding a diplomatic solution to prevent the implementation of US tariffs, drawing on experiences from previous trade negotiations during Trump's first term. Ebrard emphasized the importance of cooperation and mutual understanding in addressing shared challenges, such as migration and drug trafficking. He also criticized renewed protectionist threats, asserting that they would significantly harm both economies. In addition to possible retaliatory tariffs, Mexico is actively seeking to strengthen its economic position by decreasing its trade deficit with countries like China and attracting foreign investment. President Sheinbaum unveiled the Plan Mexico, which aims to substitute a portion of imports with domestic production and develop key sectors like automotive and aerospace. This strategy is intended to bolster Mexico's economic resilience amid external trade pressures. Analyzing US oil imports, Canada has consistently been the top supplier of crude oil to the United States, a position it has strengthened over the years. By 2023, the US imported approximately 3.8 million barrels per day from Canada, making up over 50% of all US crude oil imports. This figure has steadily grown from around 2.4 million barrels per day in 2010, driven by the expansion of Canada's oil sands production and the development of cross-border pipeline infrastructure, such as the Keystone Pipeline system. The increase in Canadian imports has been facilitated by the geographical proximity between the two countries and the compatibility of Canadian heavy crude oil with US refining capabilities. Refineries in the US Midwest and Gulf Coast are optimized to process heavier crude types, which are abundant in Canada's oil sands. The value of crude oil imports from Canada reached $97.18 billion in 2023, underscoring its vital role in US energy security. Mexico is the second largest supplier of crude oil to the United States. However, concerns about Mexico's declining production capacity and policy shifts favoring domestic consumption have raised doubts about its ability to maintain export levels in the long term. Conclusion. President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, China, and other major trading partners have sparked widespread concern about their potential economic impacts, not only for the targeted nations, but also for the United States and the global economy.